Cover art was critical. In the '78 era, you walked into a record store and somebody climbed a ladder and pulled down records for you. But in the album era, the early 1950s, you browsed for albums, and the covers, it was almost like a supermarket. The covers were like cereal boxes. The job of the cover was to seduce you, and the back was to sell you. So you'd be caught up by the imagery on the cover, whether it was the artist or the graphics or some image on the cover. And then if it caught your attention, you'd turn it over, and the liner notes were there to sell you in, to make a convincing argument, a compelling argument as to why the artists were special and why you absolutely needed to buy this album more than any other in the store. In the early days, almost like the early days of the internet, where nobody really cared about what websites looked like, they were more concerned with coding and making sure something went up. In the early days of the LP, the 10-inch LP in the early 1950s, most record companies were just slapping anything they could on the front to occupy the 10-inch square cardboard space, and they didn't really give much thought to what was on there. As soon as the record store chains developed across the country, and as soon as people bought records the way they would buy things in a supermarket, you had people looking at album covers, and album covers became the sell point. So for most of these labels, and specifically Prestige, not much thought went into what went on the cover. They just didn't know what to do with this new space. They suddenly had to fill it with something. Blue Note, of course, had very clear vision with Francis Wolff, but Prestige at this point didn't quite know what to do, so it was a lot of cut and paste. Miles Davis or Zoot Sims slapped on a cream cover with the big Prestige logo, and they figured that was enough. But at one point, Rudy Van Gelder takes Bob Weinstock aside, and he said to Bob, really have to up the game here. You know, Blue Note's doing amazing things with graphics. More labels are moving in this direction. It's not enough to do what you're doing. So Bob Weinstock immediately hires freelance illustrators and graphic artists. You get a completely new, crafted, packaged look to Prestige's albums, and the album covers for Prestige at this point, when Reed Miles starts to design those covers, is knockout, drop dead. It's just graphically powerful and highly reflective of the excitement of the music inside.